It's us again. That was our music teacher, Jeremy, playing the lovely waiting room music. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please feel free to message if you can't hear or see us, but I hope it's all okay. You'll have to excuse the new Zoom account. The department has changed some of the permissions, so if you're wondering who Frank Stacey-Coyne is, that is the name of my cat. I'm using my cat's Zoom account for this, but that does allow us to make sure that you guys can access the stuff a little bit more easily. As in the past few weeks, you'll have to excuse me a little bit looking at a screen trying to admit people in from the meeting room, but thank you for joining us. Again, if you have any of your questions, please put it in the chat to us, and we'll try to get through those as we go. Without further ado, I'll now pass over to our principal, Robin Matthews, to talk a little bit about what the meeting, the presentation today will be about.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this afternoon. And here we are on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. But wherever you are, we want to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's wonderful to see so many faces on the screen, and it will be nice eventually when we get the chance to actually meet face to face later on, hopefully in this term or even next term. So I do hope you have had a restful and safe holiday break and the chance to have some time away from your screens. But look, as we move into term 2, we need to ensure that everyone is going to be safe, and that includes both all of our students, our teachers, and of course our wider community. So this afternoon's presentation is about our plans for term 2 and an opportunity to update you on what we'll be doing to ensure that our students do have a managed return to school in term 2 and even potentially term 3. So in the next few days, we will be sending you some information via email about how that's going to work and what it would look like. But before I do that, I would like to introduce members of our leadership team who are here this afternoon and what topics we will be covering. Jodie Kelso, Head Teacher Administration, will be discussing our learning session timeframes and our remote learning reports. Karen Witherden, Head Teacher English and HISI, Human Society and its Environment, will be discussing our positive education framework and how we can incorporate that into our daily timetable, as well as an update on our MCA and our PIP on Tuesday. Nigel Kwan, Head Teacher Science, will also provide an update in relation to our assessment and reporting. So now back to term 2, just a few key points. We will be operating in the same manner as the last 2 weeks of term 1. And that means we are open for any student who wishes to attend school. Now, in the language of our department, this is known as phase 0, and our school will be operating with a skeleton staff until week 3, that is until Monday the 11th of May. So it's important to stress that our students will be learning the same way, whether they are at home or if they are at school. Now, the next phase will be known as phase 1, and that's from week 3 onwards. And students will be given the opportunity to attend school for 1 day a week, and this will be based on our touchdown groups. And this was a decision made by our leadership team because we felt this was the best way for our students to connect and also had that opportunity to touch base with their teachers and with their fellow peers. So students will be attending on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday according to their touchdown group. Tuesdays will be a dedicated day as a learning hub for students who may require additional support, and our learning support teacher will be available to be on site to support our students. Now, please don't think this is all the information at once, as we will be sending out this information via email later on in the week. But it is important to remember that whilst at school, we will be practicing physical distancing measures and our hygiene practices to ensure the safety and well-being of our students and our staff. So we will be encouraging our students to stay in the one learning space all day to avoid unnecessary contact. And we'll also ensure that our students are dismissed in a staggered manner after 3 p.m. at the end of the day. Now, it is important to take these phases 1 step at a time. And as we do increase our time here at school, we'll also be taking the direction from our department. And as you are very well aware, the landscape is changing on a daily and hourly basis. So what I'll do now is hand over to Jodie to discuss about the lesson, our learning session times, and also about our reporting mechanisms. Thanks, Jodie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, the remote learning session times. Robin emailed you all at the end of last term to send out the adjusted session times, and I shared them with students via the MCF Year 7 Touchdown 2020 team at the end of last term. Based on the feedback you gave us via the survey, we realised we needed to put in more rest periods for students and shorten those session times a bit. And there was a strong message about students needing to interact with one another. So we've also included an extra touchdown session on Thursdays to allow for that interaction between staff and students in the touchdown groups. So I'm sure you're all really looking forward to those. Remote learning reports, we will be issuing those each fortnight this term, and they will be a simple one-page report where all of the teachers can indicate your child's level of engagement with remote learning throughout that fortnight, and they will be shared with you via the parent portal. If you don't have an access code for that, please email or call the office and they can give you the code so that you can access the reports. And as Robin said, there'll be more information coming regarding week 3 and beyond. Thank you. Over to Karen.
Okay, I'd like to firstly start talking about positive education. That's one of our very core tenets here at Inner Sydney High School. And we spent much of yesterday working on that and how we take care of student wellbeing by looking at how we forward front, if you like, the elements of psychology that have been shown to make a real difference in terms of children coping with many of the difficulties that are present in the current landscape. That it has as its basis the elements of PERMA and also character strengths. And we've been looking at those through Touchdown, but we've also been sending some information home about how we encourage our students. And one of the things we're going to be doing, particularly this term, is by explaining to the students with each session what some of the elements are of character strengths or of PERMA that they might need to draw on in these times which are very different. So things such as perseverance in coping with the technology and overload, things such as practicing gratitude and being grateful for what we do have, things such as health and actually trying within the limited frameworks that we have, paying attention to our physical well-being through things such as reflecting, taking time out. And we're going to continue working on this to really strengthen our students so that they can cope with, you know, what life is giving them at the moment. And we've been really grateful and very thankful to see that they are actually doing many of these things already and referring to these in some of their conversations. And that's been really wonderful as an educator. The other thing I'd like to talk about today is the MCA project and some of the changes that are happening in terms of that. One of the principal aims of the project we've had with the MCA is the development of creative thinking. And we've certainly been called upon to develop that in our own practice as we've had to move online. The MCA is out of action. Our plan originally was that the children would be going down to the MCA or within our own space and be looking at why sharing our stories is important. And this is particularly relevant as a beginning school, that we look at our nature of story and identity and how we are all coming together as a community. In our discussions with the MCA, we decided that this is still a really relevant thing to explore because, you know, our story at this time is one that's going to be remembered down the ages. And so what we're going to have is the children actually working to answer this question, and they can either do it individually or in pairs through a collaboration space. And what we're going to be providing with the MCA is a series of research elements that they are going to be able to refer to. So, for example, a student might choose to look at identity through making a podcast, or they might produce an artwork, or they might make a short film or a cartoon. So it's really about the child pursuing their own passion in relation to answering that question. We're going to have a lot of resources provided by many members of our own staff in areas that interest them, but also research channels which are going to be staffed by MCA people and going to have those available for the students as well. They will still be in their original PIP classes, but be able to access that information. If students have further queries, they can contact their class teacher or me, and I can answer those questions for them as well.
Okay, now over to Nigel.
Hi everyone. Again, just really quickly for those of you who have come in, can you please ensure your video is turned off so we don't see your faces, because it does overload the servers a little bit. But nonetheless, I'm here to talk to you a little bit, to give you a bit of an update about the assessment and reporting, and we've been doing some work at school over the past 2 days about it. You may or may not have heard, but from the Department of Education, they are still waiting on some advice because it has national Australia-wide policy implications as to what the reporting and assessing will look like for New South Wales public schools within this COVID-19 environment. We're still waiting, and we will take that advice on board, but our school is actually already in a really good position to actually do the non-COVID-19 version, if I dare say it that way, original plan as to how assessment and reporting would look like. So, as you may know, the students have been doing their checkpoints already. And so we actually are very well positioned to meet our requirements in the pre-COVID-19 world. But just to reiterate, they are looking at, I dare say, relaxing the requirements for reporting and assessing. And we'll take that advice when it comes from the Department of Education and let you know. So speaking of checkpoints, which is how the students have been having their achievement assessed, we'll be trialling the use of what's called the continuous assessment module in Central. And Jodie mentioned the progress reports or the engagement reports. That will give parents and families an ability to understand how the students are going in terms of the engagement in the lessons. And the continuous assessment module that I'm talking about will give parents and families an understanding of how students have performed or how their achievement has been in relation to the checkpoint. So it gives you two of those lenses to look at student engagement at the school. More information will come out on that. We are trialing that continuous assessment module, so we expect that to go live in a few weeks, but you can be sure to know that we'll keep you updated in relation to that. Now, speaking of assessments, as some of you may know, the kids have been doing their assessments at home. It has been a bit more lenient. We have been quite flexible. As we mentioned in the last Zoom meeting, that idea of looking after student wellbeing as being our primary focus is still the case. But as things start to settle down a bit, students have been doing their checkpoints quite well. And we have time now for students to catch up on some of those that they may have missed. So it's a little bit lenient, but what I would ask our family and community to help support is trying to help the students, have an honest approach to doing their assessments. I know they're doing it at home, they have as much time as they want to do it, but teachers are giving a bit of a guideline as to how those assessments and those checkpoints should be done. So as much as you can support us in helping the students adhere to that, and for some of the students listening, I can see your names on the screen, that goes for you guys as well. Many teachers are being flexible with the submission date, so please don't feel free. So in science, for example, if you haven't completed our checkpoint 2, that is totally fine. We are being flexible with the date that's done, but the most important thing is that students do try to attempt that so we can start to gauge how they're going and how we can best move forward with their learning. So the checkpoints are still going ahead with remote learning. Robin touched on a few of those phases. At the moment, over the next 2 weeks and even beyond that, our checkpoints will continue to go ahead in the remote learning fashion. And just to re-emphasize what those checkpoints are, they're just small little feedback opportunities where students they receive a grade, an outstanding, high, sound, basic or limited grade for the checkpoint that they do, and are also given some feedback to help move their learning forward. So the next step in that, and this is kind of the nice thing, trying to look beyond the non-COVID world. We had our best laid plans for what the year was going to look like, and very surprisingly and hearteningly, we're still very well positioned to keep ensuring that we deliver on those things. So one of the things where, and I'm not sure if you remember, or if my discussions last year when I went around to the primary schools about how the student-led conferences will look like. In other language, we talked about language being different, the parent-teacher nights. and a big backbone of that being the student e-portfolios. So at the moment, with the students doing their checkpoints at remote learning, we're going to start to introduce how they can create their e-portfolios, so how they can start to collect the information they are getting from their checkpoints into one place on OneNote. And that can be a platform for informing these student-led conferences. How that will look all depends, of course, on COVID-19 and how the curve goes and how the social distancing laws are relaxed or not. But that's just something to look forward to and something to remember all of those plans we had not so long ago, that students will be taking the checkpoint feedback that they are getting back, collating it into an e-portfolio, and that's actually going to then inform the student-led conferences that we'll keep working on having as we continue on going on to the year. And more excitedly for us, we're looking at actually incorporating some of the student reflection statements into the actual reports that you guys will be getting as well. As I said, the reporting guidelines will have to follow the department advice that will come through to us. But nonetheless, it's still exciting to see how all of the stuff that we talked about last year and what our plans were are starting to come together even in this odd and interesting time. I mean, that's all I have for the assessment and reporting stuff. I see there are some questions on there. Please, if you do have any questions, we can try to address those as we go on. But as those come through, I might pass back if there's anything else.
Thanks, Nigel. I'm just looking, it's great to see those questions coming through. I might just ask whether Jody might like to have a respond to that question in relation to the central calendar, in relation to the checkpoints. We actually did discuss this today in our school development day, so it might be worthwhile if I hand over to you, Jody.
We have been discussing a number of ways, like whether we're using a diary or what's the best way to ensure students are responsible for their own learning in this area. But certainly I can look at creating a central calendar that teachers can put the checkpoints in. But we do want to reinforce that they are low stakes, they're formative. We will be doing a number of mini checkpoints along the way. So we really don't want that to be an extra cause for any anxiety or stress that might be created, particularly in this remote learning period that we're going through.
There's some questions there. A simple one about when you say parent portal, do you mean central? Yes, it is the central parent portal. And there is a question there which says, how do parents check on the status of checkpoints? That goes to what Jody mentioned about those progress reports. Teachers, if students aren't, completing the work or aren't engaging, that will be reflected in those fortnightly progress reports, for lack of a better word, that will come out.
Okay, everybody. At this point in time, we don't have any more questions coming through. I'll just double check in terms of our messages. Look, but I think what's really important is that there's a lot of questions, and we do try to attempt as best we can to answer your questions. I suppose the biggest one is, when will we return to school? And that's something which, of course, I can't answer. But we do know there is a phased approach to ensure that students will return to school in a gradual way. And of course, in our setting, we're in a really great position to bring Year 7 back in a timely and responsible manner. And as we said, we'll do that through our touchdown groups. So as I mentioned before, it is approximately 25% of our year group will come back each day, with Tuesday being the day for our students who require some additional support, which we've termed our learning hub. But really, in terms of how long that will stay for, we actually don't know that, but we do have our plans in place to ensure that our students, when they return, we're going to get back to what life was like pre-COVID-19, and I know for sure that we'll be looking forward to that. Now, I believe there might have been just one more question.
Just a question about the canteen.
And I might just, sorry, there was just one more thing. Now, actually, in terms of the canteen will be functional, that's a very good question that we'll take on notice. The cafe across the road is actually still open, but we just need to verify that one. So we'll get back to you on that one and provide that information for you. The other question was about, I think Nigel, it's my eyesight here, the timetable, sorry.
The timetable will be what is in central. A few questions around just, it is the central parent portal. That will be where the stuff that Jody and I will be But as we mentioned, that's what we're going to be starting, and you'll get way more information on that. There's a few people who asked questions. They came a bit late and asked to repeat stuff. I won't bore everyone with that. This stuff is posted on YouTube. I'm sure you would have got the emails from Robin saying that, so you can always have a look at it later. But as I said, this is just so you can hear our beautiful music teachers playing, and just so we can have some contact with you and respond to your questions. All of the details of accessing the parent portal, accessing those reports, accessing continuous assessment module will come out in a more orderly, text fashion than us trying to get it through this Zoom call.
Sorry.
Timetabling on the one day at school and remaining remote learning days. How will that work? Okay, so answering the question, how will the timetabling work on the one day at school and 4 days remote learning? It's actually, the one day at school is for face-to-face contact, so the students will still be doing the same platform of learning that the students who are at home on that day would be doing. It just allows us to check in with your child that one day a week, but it is the same as what we have been doing in the last 2 weeks of last term.
And can I add to that, Jodie? It also provides the opportunity for students to connect with each other. So of course there's going to be the physical distancing, but it's a chance for actually just students to see their teachers, but it's also a chance for students to see each other again. So we have actually built in on that day the opportunity for students to actually have some downtime. So it isn't just going to be structured sort of online learning the whole day, but a chance for students to actually debrief, have a chat, and to have that connection again, and that's why that's so important. Now, I don't think we have very long remaining, so what I will say though, for those of you that might be watching this on YouTube, please keep in mind, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call. We are on site every day. Please call, email, we're happy to answer your questions, but I probably will end on that note and say once again, thank you so much for your ongoing support. It means a lot to us as a leadership team. We really do miss our students, we miss you as parents and our community, and we certainly are looking forward to perhaps seeing some more students over the course of the next few weeks. But we are certainly looking forward to life post-COVID-19 like the rest of you. So take care, and that information will come out to you later on in the week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.